Well, hello, and thank you all for joining us. Welcome to the 2024 Candidates Night. My name is Erin Richardson, and I will serve as your moderator for the evening. I'd like to start by thanking Yvonne Bright and the Hanover Women's Club Juniors for coordinating and hosting this event for our candidates and for our community. For those who may not know, the Hanover Women's Club was founded in 1970, and they started their Candidates Nights 45 years ago. So we appreciate the platform your club has created to allow us to get to know our candidates better ahead of the election. Thank you to Colleen Smith, station manager for HCTV, for your help in making this Zoom presentation possible for the town of Hanover. It is much appreciated. Due to the large number of questions we have received to address here tonight and our limited time, some questions may be consolidated so that we're answering as many as we can and providing most value to our audience. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for opening statements. Following opening statements, we'll have a question and answer period, at which time each candidate will be given 3 minutes to respond to the question that's asked. If you would like the question to be repeated, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm happy to do so. Each question will be read as written and submitted by its author and will be directed to the appropriate department. To close, each of you will be allowed 3 minutes for a closing statement. We ask you to be mindful and do not exceed the time given, to be respectful to all the candidates here tonight. For those that have joined to hear our candidates, there are a total of 9 open positions on this year's ballot. Running unopposed are Marianne Brignoli for the Planning Board, Kate Dauphiné for the Board of Health, Jean Ciansola for the trustee of the Public Library, and Doug Thompson for town moderator. Also running, we have 2 candidates vying for 1 position for the Board of Assessors, Melcy Zango, who is not in attendance tonight, Les Molino, and we have 3 candidates vying for 2 positions for the school committee, Libby Corbo, Ryan Hall, and Megan Campia. And for select board positions, our 2 candidates are Steve Luco and Greg Satterwhite. At this time, we'll begin our opening statements. We will start tonight with our school committee candidates. Libby Corbo, would you like to start?
Thank you so much. I would be happy to start. I'd like to start by thanking the Women's Club Juniors for hosting this event and our moderator, Erin Richardson. Thank you very much. My name is Libby. I am married to Greg. We have 3 lovely children, 1 proud graduate of Hanover High School and 2 who are currently at the high school. I'm the only school committee member with high school age children. I've lived in Hanover for 20 years, just actually a little bit more than that. I've served on the committee for 4 terms. I'm running for my 5th term, and it will be my last term. I am running because I love our students. I think education and opportunity are the greatest gifts you can give children, other than a loving home. My experience includes, I have a labor and employment background in municipal law. So I've always worked in the public sector, and I've always worked with municipalities. Part of that has looked like labor and employment work as an attorney, but I've also done consulting work where I worked for the Collins Center of Public Management at UMass Boston. And in that capacity, I provided audits and organizational structure and advice to municipalities. And I also did charter work where I advised municipalities on creating efficient government structure through charters. I have a solid understanding of municipal finance, and I think that this is going to be something that is going to be much needed in the challenging years that we have coming up for the school. As everyone knows, anyone who's engaged enough to be here tonight realizes that the schools and the town have a financial crisis that's before them, and how we address that and how we manage that is going to be a key aspect of the school committee's work in the upcoming year. Based on my experience, I think that I would be a valuable addition to the school committee. I'm also very involved in town. I've served the town in a number of volunteer capacities, including being vice president of the Hanover Food Pantry. I also run a nonprofit that provides a consistent source of donations to the food pantry. And I've been involved in other ways too, including running a Daisy Troop and also running the Hanover 02339 Together campaign. during COVID. So that is it for me for my opening statement. I'll happily defer to the next candidate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Libby. Next, we'll have Ryan Hall.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ryan Hall, and I am running this year for re-election for my second term, 3-year position of school committee member. I want to begin by thanking the Hanover Women's Club Juniors for inviting me to this important event, as well as the community members that are here tonight and my fellow candidates. I have worked to contribute to public education in a number of different districts over the past 20 years. Some of my experience includes classroom teaching, grant writing, planning with local and regional committees, and curriculum development. I'm currently teaching high school mathematics in a neighboring district, and I'm also the sitting vice chair of the school committee. In addition to my professional career, I am also the proud mother of 3 children. My youngest attends Center Elementary School, while my other 2 currently attend Hanover Middle School, and my oldest will be moving up in the fall as a freshman to Hanover High. Not only are they students in our schools, but also active members of clubs and sports teams throughout the town. As a family, we continue to make the most of every opportunity we can to be active participants in the larger Hanover community. My last 3 years on the school committee have given me a deeper understanding of town governance and an invaluable experience in specific ways that our committee can support the school department in its effort to provide the best education for all Hanover students. It's my goal to continue the work that's needed on behalf of the citizens of Hanover to be a top-performing district. It is imperative that we are able to celebrate our successes as well as continue to acknowledge and identify areas where we can improve as a district. Through collaboration with the administration and my role on subcommittees, work has begun to identify these areas. However, in order to move all of our students forward, we need to efficiently allocate resources and effectively implement the changes necessary to make progress towards this goal. I am seeking re-election because I am dedicated to the students of Hanover. With my experience as a committee member, an educator, and a parent, I bring the passion and commitment necessary to continue to represent all of you on the school committee for the town that I call home. As a taxpayer, a homeowner, a teacher, and a full-time working parent to 3 children in the Hanover school system, I am dedicating to making thoughtful and informed decisions. And if I'm re-elected, I will continue to ask the hard questions, listen to the community, and put the needs of the students of Hanover first and foremost. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Next, we'll have Megan Campia.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to share why I'm running for school committee. So my family and I moved to Hanover in 2020. My husband and I have 3 boys. They are in kindergarten, 5th grade, and 8th grade. And so during our time in Hanover, we have had an opportunity to be participants in 3 of the 4 schools. So we have not had students at the high school, but I was a special education administrator at Hanover High School last year, so have a bit of a perspective of that building as well. I've worked in special education since 2010, primarily in the role of a special education administrator. I've spent the majority of my career in the private sector, so in out of district placements in leadership capacities. I did 3 years in public school from 2020 to 2023, with the final year being at Hanover High School. I currently work as the vice president for student programming at Cardinal Cushing Centers here in town. And so I'm running for school committee because I think my area of expertise in the area of special education would be a benefit to the committee as we move through the next 3 years. Obviously, you know, as Libby had said, anybody who's been watching is well aware of the budget issues and where we are with the override. And, you know, in looking at the fiscal trends since 2023, you know, we've seen a significant uptick in our special education costs as a district. And, you know, I think that in looking at numbers, you know, and looking at the percentages of students who are identified, the percentage of students receiving services, the percentage of students being served in out of district placements, those have all steadily increased in our community in the last 2 years. So just looking at our out of district placement costs in fiscal year 2022, or I'm sorry, 2023, they were at $2.2 million. Looking at the projections the school committee shared in January, we're looking at a $5.5 million for that same service for fiscal year 25. And so with my background in special education and being, in the trenches as it is with the trends and the direction of sort of special education at the state level in the private sector, but then also being aware of what's happening in the public school sector, I feel like my experiences and my background would be very, very beneficial in a role to school committee, as I would be able to help support our district administration and our community and making decisions about our budget moving forward.
Thank you very much, Megan. We appreciate that. So next we're going to go to our select board, and we will have Greg Satterwhite start us off.
Great. Thank you very much. My name is Greg Satterwhite, and I would like to thank the Women's Club Juniors for hosting this event. And I thank everyone here who's here tonight to share their views on our town. And I should mention, good morning from Singapore. It's 7 a.m. Wednesday morning. I've lived in Hanover for most of my life. My single mom moved us here when I was 11 years old, and I went to Hanover Junior High, played many years of youth sports, and graduated from Hanover High School in 1983. My wife, Lisa, and I currently live on Walnut Street, where we've been for the last 20 years. Hanover was and still is a great place to grow up and live, and I'm thankful for our community for providing me with a supportive and meaningful foundation, which prepared me to go out into the world and make a difference. Back in the 80s, I worked for the U.S. Department of Defense and U.S. Senator Bob Dole's Senate office while working towards a degree in international affairs at George Washington University. When I moved back to the area in 1989, I worked for several years in various technical roles at Harvard University and ultimately Apple Computer. For the last 18 years, I have served as president and principal consultant of PS Tech Group, the consulting company I founded in 2006. Over that time, I have collaborated with clients in 68 different countries, and I lead organizations to overcome complex issues to achieve pragmatic and logic-driven solutions. I am known as a consensus builder and a tenacious problem solver who is willing to tackle any challenge. As a member of the advisory committee the past 3 years, I've had the unique opportunity to see firsthand the in-depth inner workings and complexities of our town's operations, personnel, and resources, and by extension of that, the budget that keeps it all running. There will be questions this evening about the impending override vote, but unlike a politician running unopposed who could attempt to fly under the radar being wishy-washy, residents deserve to have elected leaders who lead, and I want to make my position clear from the outset. Even though the override budget as presented is not perfect, and there are certainly some specific things I would have done differently, I feel compelled, based on my personal investment in months of presentations, research, and analysis, that we must pass the override budget for the long-term fiscal health of our town. What we would lose in personnel, experience, resources, and services in the short term will indeed take years to recover from and will ultimately cost us more, a consequence we frequently seem to repeat. I believe many of the challenges facing Hanover could be an entrepreneurial approach from an individual who has made a career of creating solutions. I also believe that our elected officials have the responsibility to lead. Residents deserve to know what the people they elect to serve them think about the issues. As a member of the Select Board, I promise to be inclusive, decisive, and always act in the best interests of the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Steve Luco.
All right, I'm next. Thank you, Erin. Thank you to the Women's Club for putting on this event. I'm glad to see everybody here vying for their roles. Really appreciate the effort that all the volunteers in town put in. It helps make Hanover a great place, not just because of us. There are a lot of people out there that we do it for. And I moved to Hanover to raise my family. When my wife and I chose Hanover. We've raised our kids here and have enjoyed our experience here. The schools have been a big part of that. Youth sports have been a big part of that. We wouldn't want to be anyplace else. My wife and I met at college up at St. Anselm College up in Manchester, New Hampshire. We spent some time living there. 1 year, my college experience, I lived in Spain. I've lived other places and seen other places. I've had jobs in sales and in construction management that have given me an opportunity to travel all over the country, all over the region, all over the world. And, I've seen the kind of places that, Hanover has the potential to be, and Hanover really is and strives to be. And I believe that we do a great job here. We have a lot of different constituents with different concerns, different situations. We have residents that support the schools wholeheartedly, and we have residents that also have to plan for their retirement. So we have competing interests, right? We're all looking to try to get to the same endpoint, which is a successful place to live for all of us, but it has to be a balanced approach. And I try to bring that approach to the select board, and I'm looking forward to 3 more years. Making equitable decisions for the town. The things that I've worked on haven't just been for one special interest group. They've been for the whole town and the whole community. I got involved in public service as a member of the Conservation Commission, and really it was in an effort to try to make our groundwater better for everybody, to try to make Hanover a healthy place. I enjoy the outdoors. I enjoy our trails. A project that I really spearheaded was the Hanover Branch Rail Trail and bringing that into Hanover. I applied for grant funding from the state of Massachusetts and received, over $373,000 worth of grant funding for that project, the money that we brought into Hanover for that. I think the Department of Public Works still has a little bit more work to do there, but it's almost done. Anytime we seem to undertake a public works project, it always takes a little bit longer than expected and costs a little bit more money. We do have Mass DOT coming in this spring or before summer, hopefully, and installing the crosswalks and pedestrian signals that they promised. That's a small project compared to some of the big ones that we have to undertake, that will improve our water quality. But those are all things that, they benefit everybody, they benefit the community, and I'm proud to be a part of. Looking forward to tonight, and I thank the Women's Club for putting this on.
Thanks so much, Steve. Next, we will move on to the planning board. Marianne Brugnoli.
Good evening. Thank you. A special thanks to Hanover Women's Club Juniors, of which I was a proud member for many years, especially Yvonne Bright, and to our moderator, Erin Richardson. Good evening. And to all of the candidates who are participating this evening. Hanover is home to the Brugnoli family. My husband opened a business on Route 53 in 1977, and that business is still in operation today. We moved here in 1980, raised and educated our children here, and I'm a proud retiree of the Hanover school system, having taught 8th grade students for 22 years. I started attending planning board meetings as a concerned resident. It was an eye-opening experience to learn how much planning, how much dedication, how much work went into every decision made by the members of the board. I found myself interested in the zoning process, especially land use, and I ran for re-election and won a seat on the planning board in 1991. And with the exception of 2 hiatuses due to cancer, I am entering my 27th year as a proud member of the Hanover Planning Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Next, I will ask the Board of Health, Kate Dauphiné.
That's right. Thank you.
Yes.
I am Kate Dauphiné. Thank you to the Hanover Women's Club and Erin for moderating. I am lucky. I guess I would say I ran for the Board of Health as a nurse of 20 some odd years. I'm actually getting closer to 30 now, but in the middle of a pandemic, to try to help sort of address some of the issues that were facing us. I have learned more in the last 3 years about septics than I thought I would ever know. Please don't forget to have your service regularly. It is just a great way for me to be able to use my background to give back to the town. I have been so fortunate since we've been here. We've raised 3 kids here. I have one at the middle school and one at center right now. I've served on the PTA, and this was just sort of the next way to give back for me to a town that's given us so much. And I look forward to doing another 3 years.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's hear from the trustee of the public library, Jean Cianciola.
Great. Yeah, I'm Jean Cianciola, and I'm running for re-election to the Board of Library Trustees. And also thank you very much to the Hanover Women's Club. They do a great job with this event. My husband, Mike, and I have lived here for over 31 years, and we raised 3 kids here who are all now young adults. And I put in a plug, my oldest just got engaged, so we're pretty excited. I have always been involved, probably since the second year we were here, with different community groups. I'm a member of the Friends of the Library, the American Legion Ladies Auxiliary, Hanover Women's Club, Republican Town Committee, Hanover Foundation for Educational Enrichment, Hanover Newcomers Club. I was president 1 year. Hanover PTA, where I was townwide secretary, Ways and Means Committee chair, Grant Committee co-chair, and Cedar School rep. HYA cheerleading parent advisor, not a coach. Was involved with the PAC 37 Cub Scouts for a number of years, in Destination Imagination as a tournament director and a coach. And because of my interest in genealogy, I recently joined the Hanover Historical Society, the South Shore Genealogical Society, and applying to join the Daughters of the American Revolution. So that, and I'm a library trustee. I've been a trustee for 7 years. Going back to the form that we all filled out for this event, the major issue that I see going on right now, as everyone else does, is the proposed override. During my time on the Board of Trustees, we've always been fiscally responsible. We have one of the smallest, if not the smallest, budget in town, and we work with the money that's allocated to us. We're fortunate that the Friends of the Library also will support and provide funds for some of our programming. We're also fortunate that we get state aid as long as we remain certified by the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. One of the more fortunate departments in town during this override period is we won't be making any cuts. We will not lose any staff. We're very fortunate. Our current services won't change. The staff remains in place. The only thing that we will lose is we had a wish list item, which we put forward because of the interest of some of the residents for summer hours on Saturdays. So our wish list item, which is what we called it, was for a part-time person for $25,000 so that we could be open on Saturdays. And that's the only thing that we will lose if there's no override. So fortunately for us, everything else will remain the same. And I've been honored for 7 years to be one of the trustees, and I'd like to continue for another term, working with our wonderful director, our dedicated staff, and the other trustees to keep the library an important and integral part of the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jean. A couple of you have mentioned the override. We will see if that comes up in our questions tonight. But first, let's hear from Town Moderator Doug Thompson.
Hi, thank you. Doug Thompson, your town moderator. This coming Monday will be my 19th annual town meeting, and really looking forward to it. I expect it'll be a rather busy and spirited event. And since I'm running unopposed again, I'll keep with my tradition of this being the one night that I talk very little and listen a lot, as I look forward to hearing what the other candidates have to say, and maybe I'll get one question. That would be fun. So thanks for putting this on. I enjoy the event.
Thank you, Doug. And last but not least, Board of Assessors, we have Les Molyneux.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Les Molyneux. I'm a candidate for assessor. I came to Hanover High School as a newly certified teacher in the fall of 1967. I soon realized what a great community Hanover was, and I wanted to move there. So I took courses at Quincy College and got my real estate broker's license, which I kept for 40-some years. My search for an affordable home in Hanover ended in 1975 when I purchased my home on Water Street, where I still reside. I took continuing ed courses for many years and finally retired my real estate license in 2020 after working 18 years with the Hanover office of Jack Conway. I do not own any real property in Hanover except for my home. Elected tax assessors ensure fair allocation of taxes to each property in town. The assessor's office is required to analyze all of the property sales in town each year and use that data to put an assessed value on all properties as of January 1st. The assessors recommend each year to the select board whether residential properties should be taxed at the same rate as commercial properties. Currently, the commercial rate is 4% higher than the residential. Some have suggested it should be much higher. I believe that would be short-sighted because our surrounding towns have a single rate, and a split rate penalizes businesses which are already assessed higher. They don't get the $100,000 CPA exemption, and they also pay personal property taxes. The solution is to grow the commercial base beyond the current 11%. We need to recruit businesses to come to Hanover, not to tax them higher than they would be in Norwell, Pembroke, Rockland, and Hanson, which all have a single rate. If elected, I would not recommend raising the tax rate on commercial property beyond the current 104% until that segment of the tax base reached closer to 20%. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. Thank you to all of you. And I commend you for sticking with your 3-minute opening statement. I appreciate that. We are going to jump into our questions now. As I had indicated before, I'm happy to repeat any question. Feel free to ask me. We are going to start with our select board candidates. And Greg, we will have you answer first. The first question is, do you support the Proposition 2.5 override proposal that, if passed, allows the town to keep the current level of employees and services?
Thank you for that question. I think most people could probably tell from my opening introduction that I am a strong advocate that the town pass the override, 2.5 override at town meeting this year. I think that we have too much to lose now if we don't do this override now. One of the big things about the override, or if we're going to lose some personnel at our schools, some firefighter positions, full-time police positions out on patrol, I think that it would take us longer to recoup that if we lose it now and have to try to hire people back later or find qualified teachers to come back later. I think the investment that the override makes in our schools is very strategic. There are some things I would have been differently, but I think the override addresses some things like services that we offer to our students. Right now, I think we probably contract out a lot of services as far as adjustment counseling, reading, improvement and other services that students need that would be better based in our schools, right in our schools where our students are. I know that there's a lot of discussion about the expense that unexpected services cost our schools. And I think by bringing some of that back into our schools gradually is a good strategic plan. I've seen a lot of talk on Hanover Talk and 02339 about the town side, and the example that's mostly listed is our fire department and losing an ambulance and how important that service is. I think as a member of advisory committee, I think the story's a lot deeper than that. We need to support departments like our fire department because maybe they can get by with the non-override budget, but what that requires is a lot more time spent by our chiefs at the department deciding every day whether they can afford to bring in a call firefighter or should they replace someone on a shift if they're out sick or away on training. I don't think we should be putting that kind of pressure on our department heads to make those types of decisions every day just to keep things running. So again, I'm a really strong supporter of the override and funding our town appropriately.
I've had a difficult time coming to terms with the override. I'm next, right, Aaron? Yeah, right. It's a big increase. It's a lot of money. And it was very predictable. In my last 3 years, we've had conversations about the budget every year. And recommendations have been made to not use temporary funding for long-term expenditures. But every year, we had this reason or that why it had to be done. And, unfortunately, some departments have been operating at an override level now for a few years, and it's been papered over by money that's come from out of district. And now, the time's up for that. And I guess, we all have to make a decision and decide, do we want to fund at this new higher level? The difficulty that I have with it is that the argument's been made that it hurts our teachers. And that kills me because I love our teachers. They do great things for my kids. I have a 14 and a 12-year-old, both in Hanover Middle School, and the teachers are some of the greatest people in their lives. What really makes it difficult is that the argument's been framed around their livelihoods. And there's just so much more to it. I know it's been mentioned a few times tonight already about out-of-district spending. And it's at an unsustainable level. I support our teachers, and I wish they could teach all kids that live in Hanover. I don't think it's right that some kids have to sit on a bus for 45 minutes on the highway to get to a school someplace else to learn something that they could learn in Hanover. There's one private school, that we get 6 invoices a month from, and it ranges anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 depending on the month. We've paid this school $345,000 since September. Now, that's enough money to hire more good teachers and have those programs here in-house and educate Hanover kids in Hanover. I don't go with the idea that we have to fund private school educations with public school dollars. I think there are a lot of things that the government should be good at, and I don't believe that profit should be priced into that for private school educations. So I wish that we did have a more comprehensive plan to deal with that. And I'd support an override for that. And I'd support an override that deals with equity issues like full-day kindergarten, which was presented to us out of the gate as being something that we had to do. And we supported it. And then that plan was changed. And now it's going to be phased in future years, which I haven't heard how they're going to do that. So that's the reason why I have a tough time with the override. At some point we may have to do it. It's just this year, I don't think they have the right plan for it, unfortunately.
Okay, this next question is for the school committee candidates. Having to send out pink slips to teachers is required by their contract. In reality, if the proposition override does not pass, how many teachers will have to be released? And how will you ensure the quality of education is not compromised? We'll start with Libby.
Thank you very much, Erin. Yes, we have a contractual date and a state imposed date for issuing pink slips to teachers. I have no reason to believe that there'd be any less cuts than what we have issued, which is 41 pink slips. Not all of those are for teachers. I think it's about 30 or so teachers. We have a budget deficit of approximately $3 million. 77% of our budget is staff. There's simply no way to close a gap of that large, of that magnitude, without cutting staff. So unfortunately, the cuts are part of funding that gap if the override doesn't pass. Hopefully the override will pass and those teachers can be reinstated. In terms of providing quality education, I think it's important for residents to know that education will look very different in Hanover if the override doesn't pass and if we have to make cuts. Unfortunately, there will be larger class sizes. There will be programmatic cuts that are made in terms of AP classes, some of the elective classes, arts, drama, music. Unfortunately, we'll have to look at those areas in order to have some cost savings. But some things will not change. Your children will be cared for, your children will be loved. All of those things will remain the same. And I think parents should have some reassurance with that. But unfortunately, the cuts to teachers are real. Like I said, $3 million, 77% is staffing. There's really no way around that. I've heard talk about out-of-district placements. I just want to be clear, there might have been some misinformation about numbers. $5 million is the entire special education budget. That is not the out-of-district costs for the Hanover Public Schools. So we should be very clear about that. And, we do have some, Mr. Luco mentioned, creating some programs in-house to service students. And that's exactly what those 5 positions in our budget are meant to do. 2 reading teachers, special education teacher, adjustment counselor, and also a speech and language pathologist to provide those services in-house so we can scale back any reliance on expensive contracted services. So there are cost savings, but unfortunately, in order to do that and provide those services in-house, it does require an investment, and that's part of our override ask as well. So that's my answer. I don't want to go over.
Thank you, Libby. Ryan, the same question to you. Do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, would you mind repeating it? Thank you.
Sure. Having to send out pink slips to teachers is required by their contract. In reality, if the proposition override does not pass, how many teachers will have to be released, and how will you ensure the quality of education is not compromised?
Thank you so much for repeating the question. Many of the things that Libby just stated are true. The 41 that we are aware of that we need to cut if the override doesn't pass has been made public. We've discussed those cuts. I think to speak to the need to continue, if the override doesn't pass, to be able to have maintain quality education in Hanover schools is going to be difficult. Libby said education will look different. Class sizes will be larger, program cuts. We said AP classes, electives, specials and specialists. This will impact college acceptance, things like that with GPA. I think the most important thing that we can do as a school committee is support the school if it doesn't pass, to be able to reposition staff the best we can, as we have in the past. For instance, last year, we determined that we needed a reading specialist that was not funded. The school got as creative as possible and chose to reposition staff in that situation. Again, to speak to, as Mr. Luco said, kind of working with a budget. We have always worked within what we've been given, but we haven't necessarily been able to bring that staff in to be able to bring those costs down over the past few years. So it's important to understand that we have made cuts and we have been as creative as possible in the past. At this point, at this time, we are in need of this overhead in order to be able to provide the services that we need in Hanover. So I think in order to stay within my time frame and not repeat everything, that would be it.
Okay, Megan, same question to you.
Yes, absolutely. So I think, obviously the numbers, I'm going off of what Libby and Ryan shared, the 41 members of our school community. To Libby's point, while 30 of them are maybe teaching positions, the other 11 positions that are cut are just as vital to the functioning of our schools. And so I don't think anybody's intentionally leaving them out, but I don't want them to get lost in this discussion either. And so our paraprofessionals who support our students, our administrative staff who support our buildings and the functioning of our buildings daily, the teaching staff that we will lose if the override doesn't pass are going to have a substantial impact on the shortfall. And so I don't know that I fully agree with the statement about the numbers I shared being incorrect. And so I did pull back up the budget presentation from January 29th. And our projection for 2025 is residential programming. We're projecting to spend just under $2 million for day school programs and I'm not sure, maybe that's not out of district, but again, a 25% increase, and we're projected to spend $1.3 million. Non-member collaborative programs, which are out of district, we're projected to spend $850,000. So all of those costs, while they always can't be predicted, they're going to have an impact on the services we can provide as a district. And so, I think that as we see our numbers continue to go up, as we see the needs of our students continuing to increase, we need the override in place so we can balance ourselves, right? So we can gain some traction. But if we lose 40 staff when we're already at a projected increase that's higher than where we've been in the last 3 years, we're going to continue to be digging out. Our out-of-district numbers are going to continue to go up. The amount of contracted services that we're legally obligated to provide aren't going to go away because we don't have people to provide it. We still are legally, obligated to provide reading services, to provide speech services. And so if we're cutting positions and we don't have the people in place to do that, then we do have to find the money from somewhere, right? And so to Steve's point earlier, some of this is unanticipated cost, right? But some of it is us failing to see the trajectory that we're on and being able to course correct and being able to take a step back and say, okay, how do we support all of our students, all 2,000 of them, in the best way possible? And starting the year by losing 40 of our school employees we're going to continue to be we're going to be playing catch up constantly. It's going to impact what we can provide. It's going to impact our services, but just as importantly, it's going to impact our future financial position because it's going to continue to push out our neediest students, which is going to end up costing us more money.
Thank you so much, Megan. Our next question is going to be for the town moderator, Doug Thompson. In recent discussions involving a school budget override, it has been brought up that only 1 out of the 9 advisory committee members currently have children in Hanover Public Schools. What changes will you be actively making that ensures that you are appointing Hanover residents that can advocate for our children in public schools? And as you fill open positions, do you put out an interest finder? What is your process?
That's an interesting point. I was not aware of the fact that one of them has children in the schools. It's not, there is no particular criteria. I've always tried to have as balanced a committee as possible, a pretty wide range of views. I think anyone who saw the discussions that went on in the AdCom this year would realize we had some very wide-ranging views as far as what was the right course on a number of issues. And that's good. I want to see a lot of debate and disagreement. 9-0 votes on AdCom don't probably accomplish the best things. And so I'm glad those don't happen. Every year when I get to the new year, I mean, it's of course highly likely we'll have an open seat, because I think it's pretty likely that Mr. Satterwhite, running unopposed, is going to be on the select board next year. And then we have, he was not up for reappointment, and then we have 3 folks whose terms are ending. And I always discuss reappointment because continuity is super important. It's very hard to be a major contributing member of the advisory committee in your first couple of years, really in your first term. It's just very complex. But I just had actually Kathy HB, through her Around Town on the web, just put out a request for me for anybody that's interested in the advisory committee. And then I'll also probably put something just after town meeting out on Facebook and a couple of the pages where people do that. It's, as all of us know, it's not easy to reach the crowds, reach everybody, but we try our best. It helps some that we have different internet and social media outlets. And then hopefully I hear from a number of folks and hear what their interests are. I'm always looking for people that are broad-minded, not there to hit one particular subject. Someone who was there because they had school-age children and that's all they cared about was the school budget. That's not an ideal candidate. It's really supposed to be about us and the breadth of issues before the town. I also look at their professional backgrounds. We have an interesting mix of legal background, financial background, nursing background, professional corporate management backgrounds, and that helps give us a diversity of opinion. So it's not it's never been a hard and fast criteria. It's a balance to try to have as broad of viewpoints as possible.
Thank you very much.
And by the way, if anybody's listening or watching on this and you think you might be interested in advisory committee, I'm moderator at hanover-ma.gov, and you can find that on the town website if you forget what I said. Or if you want to volunteer for anything else, love to have volunteers.
Thank you.
That's good.
Okay, the next question is for the trustee of the public library, Jean Cianciola. A lot of residents would like the library to be open on the weekends during the summer. To do so, though, the town would have to raise taxes. Do you support increasing taxes so the library can be open on the weekends during the summer? What are the weekly statistics on users of the library on Saturday over 10 months? And why should we open the library on Saturdays during the summer?
Okay, that was multi-part. Could you do it again? I'll jot it down this time.
There was a couple in there. Yes, absolutely. Do you want me to read the whole thing again?
If you don't mind, yeah.
Not at all. A lot of residents would like the library to be open on the weekends during the summer. To do so, though, the town would have to raise taxes. Do you support increasing taxes so the library can be open on weekends during the summer? What are the weekly statistics on users of the library on a Saturday? However many months you might have those statistics. It's asking over 10 months, but and then why should we open the library on Saturdays during the summer?
Okay. I'm going to skip to the middle one. I do not know the statistics. The library director would have that. I will say, in general, Saturdays are not very busy at the library, but I don't have numbers, so you'd have to check that with Jenny, the library director. So it was easy for me. The second, in order to be open on Saturday, we would have to hire a part-time person. So 25 hours a week, just do the whole scheduling process, which I don't have anything to do with, but I understand it's quite involved. In a perfect world, the library would be open year round, absolutely. And if we had money in our budget, we would be open all the time. To ask, considering, all right, let me see. I do not support this override, which includes taxing people so that we can open on Saturdays. Numbers of people coming in are small throughout the year. It's probably going to be less in the summer. If again, it was in our budget, I would be happy to do it, but I'm not going to support an override to, there are too many people who are struggling to make ends meet right now. I do not support increasing taxes so that the library can be open on Saturday. In the third part, like why, I'm sorry, would you read the last part? Why would we be open on Saturdays?
Why should we open the library on Saturdays during the summer?
I mean, as I said, in a perfect situation, libraries should be open at least, well, let's just say 6. Let's not do Sunday, 6 days a week, because it's a wonderful service for every age group, every resident in town. So it would be great just to provide that service, but we don't have the funding for it. I think I hit them all.
You did. Thank you so much. That was a multi-part question. Okay, so for the Board of Health, we have a question for Kate. What do you see as the most pressing public health issues facing our community today?
I mean, I think for us, we are deeply involved in like making sure that food services are safe throughout. I'm not sure how many people like sort of realize most of what we do. I'm not sure I realized most of what we did before I ran. But our department does all of the food inspections of anywhere that has a kitchen that is public, you know, so all the restaurants, shops that like Market Basket or places that do like prepared foods. So all of those inspections allow us to help keep everybody safe in our community. I think we do a lot of septic work to make sure that our town water stays, you know, that we're not leaching stuff into the groundwater that we're not supposed to, that things are cleaned and maintained. And then, you know, we do a lot of like housing issues that come up that sort of get quietly done and taken care of. I think we've, you know, mercifully, we've kind of come out of the pandemic. So the biggest issue that we faced over the last several years has kind of settled down a little bit, and we're not worried so much about vaccine clinics. But I think we have such great services that we offer to allow, you know, flu vaccines during the year, and then, you know, they inspect all the food trucks and the restaurants to keep it safe, pool inspections for public pools. I just think that our main task is just to address all of those things and try to help keep our community safe and healthy.
Thank you so much. Next question is for Mary Ann. How would you approach a proposed development that is beneficial economically but controversial among residents?
Would you repeat that, please?
Yes. How would you approach a proposed development that is beneficial economically but controversial among residents?
It would be nice to know if the person who asked this question meant residential and non-residential, but we've had that before in town, a project that looks like it's going to be quite economical for the town, really meets zoning, but residents who might abut it or residents who just don't want to see more growth speak up, attend meetings, and voice their discontent. In a way, it's very fortunate for planning board members. We have a Bible that we have to go by, and it's called the zoning bylaws. We have Mass General Law, Section 40A, 41A, which are the zoning laws, our zoning laws. Some of them are taken from that. The rest have been approved by town residents at town meetings. And if a project meets all of the requirements for the zoning, for the district that it is to be in, there's not much the planning board can do to prevent it. And even though residents might be unhappy with that, if zoning allows it, it's basically a done deal.
Okay, thank you, Marianne. Question for the Board of Assessors. Les, there is pressure to increase the rate for commercial owners. What is the maximum tax rate for a commercial owner you can support? And do you support the same property tax for residential and commercial owners?
I'm going to make a general comment about the discussion tonight. Our perceptions change through time. I taught for 35 years in Hanover, and I served on the school committee for 6 years. I went through periods of time when I saw young teachers leave, never to return. I saw periods when my class size went from 24 to 34. That was a painful time. And these are difficult times now, particularly among the seniors for whom I advocate. But going specifically to your question, currently the commercial is paying 4% higher. The towns around us have a single tax rate, so business is paying the same rate as residential. I think it's necessary to maintain a healthy business community. Empty buildings do not pay top taxes. Some of us can remember when the Hanover Mall was a bustling community. Some of us can remember walking the halls and hearing our footsteps echo off of the boarded up windows. In order to keep business healthy, we should not be charging them higher rates than other communities if we want to get new business to move in, if we want to keep the businesses we have healthy. If I am elected, I would support continuing the 1.04 until we have a larger commercial tax base. And it is relatively small at the present time. And you've got a lot of small business people. Sure, you can look at Hanover Crossing and say, well, they can pay a lot more. Well, we've got to deal with them, and they've got a good deal for the next 5 or 6 years. But there's a lot of mom and pop businesses in town who are hurting just as much as the residential people. And therefore, I don't really believe they pay a higher assessment because it's commercial. They don't get the $100,000 CPA exemption, and they also have to pay a personal property tax on all of the things in their business. So we really should be fair to the small business people. That's my comment.
Thank you, Les. Our next question is for the select board. To help reduce the number of staff who will be laid off if the override fails, would you support a 0% increase in salary for all staff for fiscal year 2025, meaning the select board 0% increase for all municipal positions? Steve, if you'd like to start on this one, that would be great.
In my experience, town staff has generally been willing to go with what's best for the community. They're here to support the community, and our tax dollars support them. We have contractual obligations that have certain step ups on an annual basis. My first 3-year term, we negotiated a contract with various unions, HMEL, the police union, the fire union, and there are contractual obligations there. So, I would support just maintaining those because we have a legal obligation to those. But as far as any other roles that are that aren't contractually already agreed upon, I would support, keeping them flat from year to year with no increase if it would prevent an override. And I think that they'd be on board with that too.
Greg?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think going into the next fiscal year and seeing what happens after this town meeting, we need to consider all options when deciding the best path forward. One way I think that we could answer this question is if we have the override, we will then be set up for several years. And I've said this, and we've said this as an advisory committee for the past 3 years, and especially this year. We do not expect the advisory committee to approve of another override anytime in at least the next 5 years. If we get the override now, all town departments would be subject to the 2.5% increase that could be levied in the next several years. And a 2.5% increase could account for raises for town personnel. Again, I think all things could be on the table, but with an override, I think we would be in a position to be able to honor our employees and be able to give them increases. I don't know if it would be the whole 2.5%, but I wouldn't say that with an override, we wouldn't be able to give them something.
Okay, thank you. I have a similar question for the school committee. To help reduce the number of staff who will be laid off if the override fails, would you support a 0% increase in salary for all staff for fiscal year 2025 for the school committee, meaning 0 increase for the entire school system? Second part to that is, what strategies will you employ to increase transparency and communication with the community regarding school budget and spending? We can start with Ryan.
Hi, sorry. Thank you. I want to be incredibly careful here as we are in open negotiations with contracts right now. So I'm going to be cautious about answering this too much. So I think supporting that is something that is being worked out between the school district and the HTA as they work on their contract negotiations. I think we've discussed openly how we budget that for the school department at meetings that we've shared our budgets with the public, and how we look at the COLA increase over the last 5 to 10 years, and how we move that forward sometimes in with those numbers so that we can negotiate with the association. In order to increase transparency, I think we've done a good job this year starting our fall budget season. We started earlier than we ever have. We've had a budget section on our website where we posted all of our information and presentations. I think I would encourage our school district to send that information out via school messenger, increase our communication in that form, as well as on the social media platform, to ensure all parents and community members know when our meetings are and what will be shared at those. So in order to increase viewers and attendees at our meetings, that would be something that I think we could continue to do as we go forward.
Thank you. Megan?
Thank you. Could you actually repeat the question? I think I have the first part, but I want to make sure I have the second as well.
Yep. So same question as the select board. To help reduce the number of staff who will be laid off if the override fails, would you support a 0% increase in salary for all staff in fiscal year 2025, meaning 0% increase for the entire school system? And what strategies would you employ to increase transparency and communication with the community regarding school budget and spending?
Thank you. So as far as the 0% increase, to Ryan's point, the teachers union would have to be heavily involved in that conversation. I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have. I think that the teachers union in Hanover, I have the utmost respect for. I worked with several of them at the high school last year, but they are a very strong union. They are a very well-connected bunch. They're very respectful and supportive of one another. And, I think that as far as a union goes, as most unions are, but they are incredibly collaborative. And so I do think that, in my experience in working with them, I always found union leadership willing to have the conversation, willing to come to the table. And again, I know it gets dicey when we're in negotiations, but, to answer that question, I think it's a reasonable discussion to have, and see if we could reach an agreement on that. I think it isn't, as straightforward with the teachers union as just saying, yes, that's a great idea and we should do that, because obviously there's layers to that conversation. But I do think, when we're facing the amount of cuts that we are, I think that in discussions I've had with school members, there's really no option at this point that I think people aren't at least willing to have a conversation about. So I would be willing to engage in a conversation around that if I were a member of the school committee, because I think it's a worthwhile discussion to have. As far as transparency and budgets and strategies, I think I'm a very accessible person, and I have found this current school committee members to be very accessible as well. I've always, if I've reached out, I've gotten a response, and pretty quick turnaround. I agree that I think the school committee has done a nice job of posting meeting documents in advance, them being readily available, them being easily accessible on the Hanover website. You don't have to go. When you try to go back and find stuff from 21, 22, you can see a difference, right? That it's actually, there's been a lot of progress in that in the last few years. I would like to see, I think, some more conversations and transparency around what we're doing proactively to manage some of these unexpected expenses that really throw such a wrench in our programming and our ability to stay within the budget. And so whether that's through office hours, whether it's joint statements from school committee and district administration, whether it's, more sort of Q&A forums for people. And again, a lot of that stuff folks have done this year, knowing that the budget was going to be in the situation that it was. So, for me, I think strategies would just be continued transparency, accessibility, and easily accessible documents.
Thank you, Megan. Same question for you, Libby.
Thank you, Erin. Again, we are in open contract negotiations, but what I can say is that when I was on the negotiation committee early in my tenure as a school committee member, we negotiated a contract that restructured the step schedule for the teachers, and this was a savings over time to the town. So I think it's important to look at not only the percentage increase, but also the structure of a contract. In terms of just a general statement about what we do with salaries in town, the town has already settled some of their contracts. And I would, encourage the community to look at those. Those are available as public records, and what the salary increases are as part of that. I think it's difficult to say you don't support an override while you're providing these types of increases to our employees. That being said, I am all in favor of paying our employees, teachers, and on the town side, a living wage. They work very hard for us, and part of that should be a reasonable compensation. I have looked at our teacher salaries, and they are competitive. We are a 50-50 insurance community, and so that impairs our ability to do recruitment sometimes, and also affects retention for our employees. And we need to be mindful of what our compensation packages are so we can keep qualified employees and recruit highly qualified employees. because the quality of education depends on the teachers who are delivering it. The other aspect of this is transparency and communication about budgets. And I think we have done an excellent job at being transparent. I think what we need to do is be accessible. That's the real issue, is how do we make the information, the budget information, accessible to the average resident? Municipal finance is complicated, and it takes a long time it's taken me 20 years to be able to speak with any type of confidence on municipal finance. So how do we make it so people can follow the budget and understand what we're talking about when we talk about levy budget? That's the real challenge. And I think it takes a lot of work to do that. I think we've done that over the last few years, being accessible, having forums, having joint meetings, and trying to communicate things in a way that everyone can understand so everyone can participate meaningfully in the budget discussion. That is so important. And I know it was mentioned about talking about being proactive in terms of things that we've discussed. And so perhaps we can start the transparency here tonight, and I can answer some of those questions about in-district services and initiatives that we have taken to reduce some of those costs. And Erin, am I out of time?
You are out of time. We will come back to you.
I will sneak that in at some point.
You will have another opportunity. For the town moderator, how would you handle a situation where a town meeting becomes particularly contentious or heated? Can you provide examples from past town meetings where you effectively facilitated a heated debate?
This is, first of all, first time I've ever had 2 questions on this. This is fantastic. There've been some heated debates in my 18 prior annual town meetings. And really, I'm very pleased at the decorum of town meeting. We do have people that are very respectful of the process, and even when they're passionate about something, in almost every case, a stern look or a brief warning will keep them within their bounds. I'm very clear up front that I won't tolerate any personal attacks or foul language or the like. And every now and then someone gets a little bit heated. I can think of a couple of individual examples. Probably some of the people on this call are familiar, not any of the people on this call, but are familiar with examples that they've seen in the past. But it's not really been a problem. There's been a few times I've had to rule something out of order. I think actually one of the most interesting ones that I always recall is that we had a very heated discussion during a special town meeting once about privatization of the transfer station. And it had come up sort of suddenly and was in special town meeting. And so everybody showed up. It's the biggest special I think we've ever had. And it was a special right before the annual. And they were very wound up about it. As it turns out, it really wasn't even a question. It was sort of a what do we think might happen in the future? And there was a lot of passion around different issues. And that meeting ended and we moved into the annual town meeting. And we opened up the annual town meeting, and when the Vox singers came in and sang the national anthem at the start of the annual town meeting, you could literally see the pressure in the room drop. It's like you can't stay angry while you're listening to a beautiful rendition of the national anthem. And I think everybody sort of realized why they're really there. They're there to participate actively in their town government. And then maybe we can just, take it down a notch and be civil. And that wasn't me. It actually was just the talent of the young singers. So I'd say, the general cases, people are pretty respectful. Because we have so many people there that want to run their town government, if a few people that want to be rabble-rousers show up, there's not a lot of opportunity for them to overwhelm the meeting. And every now and then I remind people that the rules for town meeting were written about 200 plus years ago. So they do grant me fairly arcane authority to have people removed and actually held, not just kicked out, but held somewhere. I've never had to do that. I hope I never do. But it is, it is there. So not too worried about it. I think people in Hanover are quite good about participating actively in town meeting and governing their town.
Thank you very much. Next question is for Planning Board, Mary Ann. How do you propose to handle the town's infrastructure needs considering its growth projections? Specifically, what do you propose to handle increased development, traffic, and road safety issues along the length of Route 53? And how is it possible that the Taco Bell can be shoehorned into the Target parking lot? This is already a dangerous parking lot.
Taco Bell. One of probably the projects that I am, as a planning board member, are least proud to have had to support. It actually, it will fit. It fits all of the zoning requirements for frontage, for side yard, for backyard, for maneuverability, for the width of drive-through lanes, for the width of a secondary lane. It all works. That whole, all of those buildings are under a condominium. So there is no specific parking for any specific entity. So the parking that is being taken so that Taco Bell can be built was a problem I had. However, under the condominium rules and regs of that development, the parking can be anywhere. As I said, it looks like it's being stuffed in there, and in reality, it is. But it works with zoning, and the planning board had to approve it. Route 53 is a state highway. The town of Hanover has very, very little to say on how that infrastructure is improved or what takes place on it. The only way anything gets done through the town's eye on Route 53 is if a large construction project such as the Hanover Commons happened, and then we were able to work with the Highway Department, MOD, MassDOT, to request certain right turns, left turns, to request that there be left-hand turns for left-hand traffic only, right-hand turns for right-hand traffic only. Other than that, it's really out of the domain of Hanover because it's a state-owned road.
Great, thank you so much. Another question for the Board of Assessors. So back to you, Les. What do you believe are the biggest challenges facing our town's current assessment system, and how would you address them?
The current assessment system. Well, the assessment system is basically controlled by the Commonwealth. And the Commonwealth, the Commissioner of Revenue, carefully looks at everything that we do. Our professional assessor has to study all of the properties that are sold in a calendar year and evaluate them. What did they sell for? And based on that, how do you set values for other properties in the town that are similar? And if our assessor does not do things carefully, making sure that a property is described properly, I mean, what the property sells for is what makes all the difference. If a split level house sells for 1.2 million, other split level houses in town that are similar are going to see their values rise. So the assessment system is not something that the town of Hanover has control over.
Great, thank you so much. The next question will be for the school committee, and Megan will have you speak to this first. It says, last year, the school committee overspent its budget by $1 million. The town had to approve a special town meeting article for $650,000, and the schools had to use the special education reserve fund of $510,000 to pay the remaining school expenses. What have you done to reduce spending in this current year's budget? Name a program or positions you have eliminated in this current budget, and how would you reduce spending in the budget looking back?
So I haven't done anything to reduce the budget this year, just because wasn't part of that process, obviously. But I can answer the second part of that. So, I think in any sort of process, right, you have to be able to project, and it's not always going to be perfect, right? But we should, if we have an understanding of the trajectory that the state is going, where our costs are. So one of the things that's always referenced, right, or that's been referenced a lot in the last 2 years is the 14% tuition hike that Chapter 766 schools had approved by the state legislator. And so that went into effect, I believe, about a year and a half ago. And so, that's referenced a lot as something that was, surprising or unaccounted for or unpredictable. But again, if you're following trends and you're following legislative action, that 14% tuition hike had been in discussion for 2 years before it was ever approved, right? And there was a lot of discussions happening around what's going to happen with the hike. Is it, it was a lot of back and forth, but again, it shouldn't have caught us as off guard as it did when it was approved and when it did make its way through the legislator. And so again, as far as managing the budget moving forward, I think that, you obviously have to work very closely with your district administration to make sure that, they're aware of the trends, they're aware of the spending, are there new curriculums coming out that we're going to have to purchase for our districts as a whole, right? Are there new courses that we're going to need to have teachers in place to teach due to state standards? And so again, I think if you are able to be aware of trends and the educational trends, then there's always going to be things that are unpredictable, but we should be able to stay within our budget.
Thank you. Libby, we'll have you address that one next, please.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin. I think a little history here is important, a little bit of context. It's important to note that we have been operating on a very lean budget for the many, many years. Prior to my election to school committee in 2011, we were under state average funding, and we've been under state average funding ever since. We can talk, hopefully have some time to talk about that a little bit, but I do want to answer the question. So for approximately 8 years, our special education expenses were about 21% of our budget. Now, that was steady and consistent and relatively predictable. So we were able to budget for that. Coming out of COVID, we did see a large spike in the need for services. And we looked at maybe going from I think it was about 22% to 26% of our budget in special education services. So that is impactful. Yes, and that did result in a deficit, and mainly due to when we talk about unanticipated expenses, children are unpredictable, and we meet children where they are always. That is the job of the school district. And where they are and where they were after COVID was something that none of us could have predicted. And we did have a spike in behavioral related out of district mental health placements. And that's what the unpredictable part of the budget was. There's really not much we could do in order to address that. Those are mandated service costs. But when we talk about going forward, there's no reason to believe that we aren't going to level out our expenses. And I hope that that does happen. But in the meantime, what we can do is employ smart investments that will pay off in the long term in terms of providing a reduction in contracted services and out of district placements where you see those budget spikes. And some of the things that you'll see that we've asked in our override budget, the 2 reading teachers, those 2 reading teachers can provide much needed tier 2 reading support. And that is reading support that happens before children progress to an IEP plan or 504 plan, but really we're talking more about IEP plans here. So if we can strengthen those services, that will, in the long run, should reduce the need for special education services. We also have in our budget, we have a special education teacher, we have an adjustment counselor, so we can provide some of those services in-house at a cost savings to our resident. And I was very happy to hear Mr. Luco say that he would support an override if it contained measures to reduce those out-of-district and contracted services, because you'll see that those 5 positions that we've requested do exactly that.
Thank you, Libby. Ryan, same question to you. Do you need me to repeat the question?
If you don't mind, thank you.
Sure. Last year, the school committee overspent its budget by $1 million. The town had to approve a special town meeting article for $650,000, and the schools had to use a special education reserve fund of $510,000 to pay for remaining school expenses. What have you done to reduce spending in this current year's budget? Name a program or position you have eliminated in this current budget. And looking back, how would you reduce spending in this current year's budget?
So I think I want to just start out by saying, rather than calling it overspending, we unfortunately didn't have the budget that was allowing us to provide the services that we needed, given the expenses that kind of came up within the last school year. As Libby stated, we've been very underfunded or tightly funded. And so when working within that budget, when we have situations that are unpredictable, we are then not able to account for those without going over budget. Speaking to the reserve fund that we need and the additional 600 that we needed to ask for, those are unfortunately the ways that we can close that gap when those costs rise. And we are working hard as a committee and as a town to not rely on those reserve funds in order to offset our budget. When we talk about positions that we're trying to put into place to be proactive, we're, and again, to speak to Mr. Luco's point, we are including in our budget positions that we need, 2 reading teachers, a related service provider with a speech and language person, a special education teacher, bringing all of these positions in, adjustment counselor, provide us the opportunity within a working budget that we're asking for, that the override would provide, to give students the services that they need to prevent the need for contracted services and prevent as many out-of-district placements as possible. I want to be cautious, though, that out-of-district placements are noted as the issue. I think we really need to make sure that we're taking a hard look at all of the things within the school budget. I think we're very focused on one aspect that we can all speak to, but there are a number of things within our school budget that have increased or changed throughout the course of the year that were either unpredicted or unanticipated. And just the last point to speak to that 14%, I think to be clear, that was not necessarily a shock to us as much as something that, although we were preparing for, again, when your budget doesn't allow for room or places to pull or trim, we then are in a position where our budget is going to run over with those increases. So I just want to be cautious about that as well. We were also, just a point of note too, we were granted the extraordinary relief, which we were allowed to apply for, given all of those extraordinary expenses due to special education. And due that, within that application process and being granted that funds, that was important for us to be able to understand how much that impact to our budget was. And we were grateful for that opportunity for that relief as well.
Thank you, Ryan. We have a lot of questions here from the community, a lot of great questions. We are getting near to the end of our time for questions so that we can give you guys all enough time for your closing statements. I do have one more question for the select board. And Steve Luco, I'll start with you. What measures would you advocate for to increase the town's revenue streams apart from tax increases?
I know that some members of the select board, supported a proposal this year to create some residual money from a potential billboard in town. I didn't support it at the time because it hadn't gone in front of the planning board yet, and I thought it needed some more review. As a municipality, tax revenue is really where we get our funding. Well, it's not a private business. We do have water rates that fund water infrastructure. I feel that we pay a lot in taxes. And I would love to see our town, run in a way, with some efficiencies that maybe that we could find. I know we could find to try to save some money and run it within the tax revenue that is generated. I'm not going to suggest that our town, pursue outside income. That's just not the business of a municipality.
Thank you, Greg. Same question to you.
Yeah, so I think we as a town need to look at how we can generate more revenue based on the resources and opportunities that we have. One of the things that I don't know that a lot of people know about is, for example, when we send out an ambulance and they transfer someone to the hospital, we get a reimbursement for those ambulance rides from insurance or from the patients who are transported. And if we don't have the funds to keep our ambulances on the road, we're losing potential revenue there. Let me kind of go off track a little bit and talk about the school budget. One thing I would have done differently in the school budget, if I had the means to do so, I probably would have advocated for paying or investing in full free day kindergarten right from the start. We get Chapter 70 money back from the state based on full-time FTEs of students in our schools, and our kindergartners do not count for that funding that we get back from the state because we still charge for that full-day kindergarten. The other thing that we could always take a look at is possibly looking at fees where fees may not have been updated for many years, or fees might be warranted for some of the services that we offer in town. I'm not saying that we should just go ahead and do that, but I think it's something that we need to look at a lot closer. And then the billboard issue, that one is kind of a tough one. I kind of take a little bit of offense that I just got the feeling that we had this outside group come in and basically try to write a bylaw for us that would permit their client to build a billboard in Hanover. I don't think we need $50,000 potentially in revenue from something like that would infect the character of our town. I just had a really uneasy feeling about that. I know we need the revenue, but again, preserving the character of our town, and we just voted last year to prohibit digital signage in Hanover. So that one definitely was not a good idea.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you to all of you. We will start with closing statements. We will go in the same order as our opening statements. So I will start with Libby.
Thank you so much. I'm going to focus my closing statement on the current challenges facing the school committee, and why I think we need to, or why I would ask the voters to consider keeping a unified and collaborative school committee. I think it's going to be essential dealing with some of the issues that we're presented with in the upcoming year, especially true if the override doesn't pass. But just a little history. I want to provide some context for the deficit that we're facing now. And when I first was elected in 2011, there were existing budgetary issues, which were verified by an independent audit that occurred in 2014. And that audit is available online. You can Google Focus on Finances. And one of the things that audit found was that of the 242 municipal reporting districts for fiscal year 2011, Hanover ranked 213th lowest spending on a per pupil basis. And for fiscal year 2012, okay, we're talking many years ago, only 10 municipal districts reported lower per pupil expenditures. So Hanover began many years ago at the bottom level for financing its schools. At that time, town leadership and school leadership, again, some of the town leadership has moved on, really made a commitment to incrementally increase the contribution to the schools from the levy budget. And that has happened to some extent. But what happened is the cost of education has outpaced those incremental increases from the levy budget. And it has not caught up. And this was exacerbated by COVID. And so when people focus on special education expenses as the cause for a deficit, I want to make it clear that the deficit occurred, it existed long before we had any, long before COVID, or we saw a spike in special education expenses. While that may have exacerbated the issue, we had no ability to absorb any spike in special education expenses coming out of COVID because we were still funded under the state average. Not only are we funded under state average, but we really operate at the bare minimum, including with staffing. And these numbers are important when we look at staffing cuts. We are currently 15 teachers under the state average for a district our size. We are 7 administrators under the state average for a district our size, 35 paraprofessionals under the state average for a district our size. So these numbers are going to be exacerbated by any layoffs that we have. We have been able to manage our budget by being innovative. And some of the things I wanted to mention were partnerships that we've made with, for instance, the New England Center of Children, New England Center for Children, I should say, and Landmark School, to reduce our dependence or need for out-of-district and contracted services. We also employed some Orton Gillingham training for our teachers. So again, to reduce the need for contracted services. Those are innovative things that we are doing in-house, but we can't do that without an investment. Those types of innovations require some funding to do. They result in long-term savings for sure, but we can't do that without having a budget to invest in staffing, curriculum, and programming. Finally, as my time wraps up, I want to say that this historical spending deficit, we have the ability to correct that right now with the override. We are currently still below funding in all functional categories in terms of teachers, what we spend on teachers, what we spend on administration, what we spend on services, our per pupil expenditures. For fiscal year 22, we were 4.4 million under the state average spending for schools. Now, that's per pupil expenditures. It's important to listen to that information. And all of that information is available online. So we really need to reset our funding base and give the schools the proper funding that they need to run. If we don't, and voters make a different decision, like I said, education is going to look very different. And we will require a school committee that is cohesive, collaborative, and able to work together and familiar with all of the issues and challenges that our school district faces. So I would be honored to have your vote. Again, this is the last term I will be seeking, but I have been greatly humbled by the faith that the voters have put in me for the 4 terms that I have served. And I thank the town of Hanover for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Libby. Ryan Hall.
Yes, thank you. Thank you first to Erin for moderating this evening, to all the candidates for the wonderful conversation, and thank you for hosting this wonderful evening, to the Women's Club Juniors. I want to take this opportunity just to reiterate why I'm running for re-election. I am dedicated to the students of Hanover. I've lived here for 14 years. I have 3 children in the school district. I will bring my experience, passion, and commitment to education to this position so that I can continue to represent the people of Hanover. As I stated previously, and I feel it's important to say again, if the override passes, it will be imperative that our committee continue the work within the schools to move us forward, as well as focus on strategic long-term planning for our future in order to improve our educational programming while working within our budget. If the override does not pass, we will really need this committee to immediately begin the work together with the school district to provide the best education we can for all students. A lack of adequate funding will not only prevent us from maintaining current services, but will increase our need to rely on outside services, increase our costs, and further hinder our ability to make progress and support all of the students in Hanover. I encourage all residents to continue to reach out, ask questions, and stay engaged in the conversation. As a school committee member, a taxpayer, a teacher, and a full-time working parent to my 3 students in Hanover, I am dedicated to making balanced and informed decisions for all. I want to thank you, and I humbly ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And Megan.
I also want to thank everybody for their time tonight. The community members that showed up to listen to the issues and to hear people's viewpoints. I appreciate your time and just having an opportunity to sort of participate in this forum. I think the thing that's come across really clearly to me is change is coming to the schools in Hanover. We know it's coming one way or the other. It's either going to come with the passing of the override, and it will come through the school needing to make difficult decisions about how we move forward in a way that creates a buffer and gives us stability. So we're not continually running into a deficit, or it's going to change because we're going to lose a large number of our educators. And we're going to have to adapt to that. And our children are going to have to adapt to that. As a community, we're going to have to adapt to that. And so, I think that I am running for school committee because I feel like I can significantly contribute to that process, regardless of which direction that change goes. While I think the current school committee has done a good job in the last 3 years, there are things that personally I feel like could have been done differently. I think there's things that could have been managed differently. And so I do think having fresh ideas, having a fresh perspective, would benefit us as we move forward in this time of change. Because like I said, we know it's going to change. It's just, what is that change going to look like for us? As a mom of kids in the school system, as a professional educator who has dedicated my career to administration in the both private and public sector, I think I'm uniquely qualified to be considered for a position on the school committee. And so, I appreciate the time that I was given this evening to speak about my viewpoints. I would be honored to have your vote for school committee. And I am open to speaking to anybody who has additional questions for me. Please feel free to reach out directly. I would love to answer anything that I didn't get to this evening, but thank you again. And thank you, Erin, for moderating.
Thank you to all 3 of you, our school committee candidates, and good luck. Next, we have our select board, Steve Luco.
I want to thank all the candidates for putting themselves out there. Thank you, Erin, for moderating. Thank you to the Women's Club for putting this together. And thank you for the residents that are tuning in tonight or will watch this, in the coming weeks, as we all have to make important decisions. Change is going to have to come to Hanover, whether we support the override or we don't. And we're still funding, without the override, we're still funding a healthy town government. that we'll be able to provide services. It's just if the override doesn't get supported, it would just be a little bit different. I've been a little bit unnerved about some of the conversation online and talking about it's going to be catastrophic. Watch the news. There are places in the world that experience what catastrophic looks like. It's not Hanover. So we're going to be fine on the other side of this, either way. We all want to support our schools. We all want a strategic vision for our town. And once we get through the next month, we're going to pick up the pieces and all move forward together. I wouldn't describe this as a catastrophe. It's just a challenge, and we're going to get to the other side of it. So there's still plenty of good days to come, and be there soon. All right, thank you, everybody, and appreciate the opportunity to talk with everybody tonight.
Appreciate it, Steve. Thank you. Mr. Satterwhite, we will hear from you. Thank you for joining us from Singapore today. We appreciate it. We'd love to hear your closing statement.
Great. Thank you very much. I hate to start my closing statement with the word unfortunately, but the major issues facing the town are mostly the same ones I talked about as a candidate when I ran for select board 2 years ago. Water quality and quantity, the fireworks site, traffic safety, affordability, and preserving the character of our town. These issues were also issues way before that. Every year, these same issues are talking points for candidates running for elective office, like simply acknowledging them is some great insight. Residents know what the issues are, and what they need are more leaders who are committed to finding a way to get things done. The people of Hanover would be best served by a select board that has a more diverse set of experiences, skills, and understanding, utilizing unique perspectives and ingenuity to finally find solutions for our current issues and proactively plan for the future. I hope to fill that need with your support. The most important thing that you as voters can do right now is support our community by supporting the override budget. I don't especially like paying taxes, and what we pay to the state and federal governments in taxes, we can only hope to get something back directly to help our town if we have effective state and federally elected representation that works hard on our behalf. Every dollar raised by this override goes directly to us, supporting our services, our safety, our children, and I can't think of any better way to preserve the character of our community than directly supporting the things that are important to us. Hanover is my home, and I want to put my expertise as a problem solver to good use helping the town I love. Again, I am convinced that any challenges the future may bring us is best served with fresh eyes on the issues, an entrepreneurial work ethic, and a commitment to the notion that anything is possible until proven otherwise. These are times when we need to be committed to clear priorities and unwavering and effective leadership from our elected officials. In closing, I'd like to share a John Wesley quote with you that has meant a lot to me over the years, and it pretty much describes my life philosophy. Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. I want to serve the people of Hanover, and I will make a difference. As a lifelong Hanover resident, I offer a perspective that is truly unique, local roots with a world of experience. Thank you for your time and this opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Thank you, Greg. Next, Planning Board, Marianne Bergnoli.
Thank you, Erin. Hanover is not built out, which means there is still work to be done. The quantity of water in Hanover, the quantity of water that Hanover has available is a concern. It has been a concern, and that's going to impact further building. And to that point, I believe as a town, we have to move forward with sustainability in terms of building design, excuse me, and construction. We are in the midst of working with the state on proposed housing alternatives, which are vastly different from the residential development that Hanover residents enjoy. In 1991, I made a promise to voters that I would strive to make Hanover the best it could be. And in all the years that I have been on the board, I can honestly say that I have looked at every decision through the lens of, is this the best for Hanover? As a member of the planning board, I am surrounded by talented, dedicated men and women. The staff at Town Hall is remarkable. It doesn't matter if I have a question for the IT department, for the moderator, for Concom, for the Board of Health, for the building department, for the tax collector, for the assessors, or the town manager. Everyone is more than willing to help, and I am so thankful for their support. I am proud of the zoning knowledge and experience I bring to the board, and it is an honor and a privilege to serve the town I call home. I would appreciate your support on March 18th. Thank you, everyone, for participating, and for all of the people who are watching this. Good night.
Thank you so much. Next, we will have the Board of Health. Kate.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you to the Hanover Women's Club and to Erin for moderating. We're so lucky to have a town where people are allowed to engage with their candidates like this. I think it's great. As a parent and a nurse and who occasionally subs in the Hanover schools, I'm gonna agree to disagree with Steve a little bit. I think it will be catastrophic to our kids if we don't vote for an override. So given that I'm running unopposed, I'm going to use this time to just ask that people really consider it and what it will mean for our town, for whether it's in the school system, in response times for EMS, and the other things that we are looking at that will dramatically affect the mental health of our students in schools, our populations that require, the EMS rides. I was fortunate this summer that when we called 911 for someone in my home, there was somebody here within minutes. And that meant the world to my family. So I'm hoping that we will be able to continue to provide that for other families. So please be mindful and come to a town meeting next week and hear the discussion, because I'm sure it will be robust.
Thank you. Next, let's hear from Jean, the trustee of the public library.
Pressing the wrong button. I want to thank the residents for their continued support of the library, and I'm looking forward to continuing on as a trustee. And I do obviously want to address the override as well. It's a very hard decision to make. I think it all depends on, I think it's going to come down to whether people can afford it or whether they can't afford it, regardless of whether it's for the kids or the seniors. It's all going to be an affordability issue. I hate the idea of anyone losing their jobs. But again, I think it comes down to, can people afford it? I do not support the override because I think it's too expensive. It's a forever tax of approximately 13%. There are so many people in this town who can't afford this huge increase in their taxes. There are people who are living on a fixed income and are already making the decision, do I buy my medicine or do I buy food? There are people who've moved back in with other generations of their family because they can't afford to live out on their own. I think it's a shame that the town is putting the residents in this position by asking for such a huge increase. There's also going to be another override coming up in the next few years for the new South Shore Technical High School. And our water rates will be going up significantly in the next few years to take care of our water issues. The operational override is the only one residents really have a choice in. So I suggest they vote wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Town moderator, Doug Thompson, please.
Hi, thanks to everyone for your active participation and the folks watching online. Erin, you did a great job. It's nice to have you here moderating it, and especially since we couldn't have Marianne this year since she's candidate. And I enjoyed having a couple of questions, and I greatly enjoy being your moderator. It keeps me actively involved in the town, and I take a lot of pride in the execution of town meeting and having everybody feel encouraged to participate and coaxed into speaking when some people are shy about doing it. So please show up on Monday and probably Tuesday at least for town meeting. There are important discussions to be had for the override. And there are also quite a number of other important issues on the town warrant. So don't just show up for one question. If you stick around and listen to what's being discussed, I think you'll find it very informative and important to the governance of your town. So with that, if you want to volunteer for something, either online or if you unfortunately aren't chosen in the competed races, reach out to me. We've got opportunities to appoint people, and we've always got room for more volunteers, both in the appointments the moderator has and that the select board has. Thank you very much.
All good things to know. Thank you, Doug. Board of Assessors, Les Molyneux.
Thank you, Erin. You've done an excellent job, and you didn't have to ring the gong to close anybody off. And thank you to everybody who has participated. The question was asked, where will we get more revenue? And that is a question that over a quarter of the citizens of Hanover are asking. We have a rather large senior citizen population in Hanover, and I would be remiss as a member of the Council on Aging Advisory Board if I didn't point that out. That there are many seniors who live in homes that they purchased 40 years ago. They may have inherited it from their parents. They are on a fixed income, and their property is now worth a huge amount of money. Their taxes are going up. Their income is not. What do we do for this increasing senior population? People say, well, they can sell their house and move somewhere else, except the cost of housing everywhere is high. And now Governor Healey's Affordable Homes Act is proposing to put a 2% surcharge on the sale of properties. So I would like people to think about their senior neighbors, folks who know what they would like to do, but who recognize their limitations. And with that, I thank you. I'm Les Molyneux, candidate for assessor.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our candidates. You all did a wonderful job here tonight. We wish you the best of luck at the polls. Thank you for the hours you commit to our town, making it a great place to live. Thanks again to the Hanover Women's Club Juniors and HCTV. Remember to attend town meeting on Monday, May 6th, and to vote at the annual town election on Saturday, May 18th. Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.